When Kestrel Andromeda becomes the first human physiologist at the prestigious Galactic Medical Institute, her unique approach to healing and resilience challenges centuries of alien medical doctrine. Through a series of accidental experiments, she proves that human adaptability isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving in the face of adversity. The quantum elevators of the Galactic Medical Institute hummed with nervous energy as Kestrel Andromeda adjusted her environment suit for the third time. The collar kept catching on her wild copper hair, which refused to be tamed even in the artificial gravity of Proxima 7. After 5 years of applications, appeals, and enough paperwork to fill a small moon's data core, she'd finally arrived at the most prestigious medical research facility in 7 galaxies. Through the crystalline walls, she could see beings of pure energy conducting intricate cellular experiments alongside crystalline entities that refracted light into impossible colors. In one chamber, a collective of plasma forms debated theoretical xenobiology using mathematical equations that floated in midair. Specimen Andromeda? The voice seemed to emanate from a constellation of purple light motes arranged in a vaguely geometric pattern. I am Administrator Zix, 427. Your arrival has generated significant discussion among the Institute's board. Kestrel straightened her spine, feeling the familiar pull of the station's lighter gravity. I imagine it has. Not every day you get a researcher from a Class 12 death. The light motes flickered in what might have been before Zix 427 could respond. A flowing mass of iridescent liquid emerged from a nearby chamber, forming itself into a rough approximation of a humanoid shape. Fast, it burbled. Your species' casual acknowledgement of your homeworld's extreme conditions suggests an unusual psychological adaptation to constant environmental stress. Please refrain from analyzing our new colleague before orientation is complete. The reprimand came from a towering crystalline figure, whose faceted surface caught and split the light into dazzling. I am Senior Researcher Vryn. Your laboratory assignment will be under my supervision, assuming the equipment can be adequately modified for your robust nature, added Theta Null, a barely contained mass of plasma that hovered anxiously near the. Our last attempt to accommodate a high-gravity species resulted in 3 shattered quantum microscopes and a very distressed cleaning automaton. Kestrel bit back a grin. She'd read their safety protocols for human researchers, 30 pages of increasingly concerned warnings about load-bearing capacities and impact resistance. Little did they know that their carefully calculated safety margins were about to meet their match in human ingenuity and what her old flight instructor used to call creative problem-solving under duress. Don't worry, she said, failing to completely suppress her smile. I promise to be extremely careful with your equipment. She decided not to mention the 3 prototype quantum scanners she'd accidentally on purpose stress-tested during her qualification exam. Some things were better left as surprise. 3 weeks into her tenure at the Institute, Kestrel was elbow-deep in a quantum cell sequencer when the first incident occurred. She'd been mapping the regenerative patterns of a particularly resilient species of space barnacles when the gravity generators in her lab section experienced what the maintenance logs would later describe as an recalibration event. The artificial gravity didn't just fail, it reversed. Violent. Everything not bolted down shot toward the ceiling, including several million credits worth of equipment and one surprisingly calm human physiology. Kestrel had just enough time to think, here we go, before physics reminded her why the Institute's insurance providers had required 17 additional waivers for her. She hit the ceiling with enough force to crack the quantum-reinforced panels, bounced off at an angle that would have made her old zero-G handball coach, and landed on a supposedly indestructible analysis terminal. The terminal, apparently taking offense at being used as an impromptu landing pad, exploded in a shower of sparks and holographic error messages. Through the ringing in her ears, Kestrel heard the lab's emergency doors whisper. She didn't need to look up to know who had arrived. The sound of crystalline chiming in distress, plasma particles buzzing with it, and the distinct burble of a liquid being trying very hard to appear casual, told her. Fascinate. Plexate's liquid form rippled with barely contained scientific excitement. The impact force should have resulted in complete skeletal failure. Yet subject appears fully functional. I'm not a sub. Kestrel groaned, sitting up amidst the wreckage of what had previously been a very expensive piece of equipment. And this wasn't a very subtle first attempt at studying human durability. The assembled alien researchers froze in various states of embarrassed manifestation. Vrin's crystalline structure vibrated at a frequency that made nearby beakers resonate nervous. Theta Null's plasma form contracted into a tight, guilty ball of attempt? Zix 427's light motes dimmed to an anxious purple. We assure you, this was merely an unfortunate equipment malfunction. Kestrel dusted off her environment suit, noting with amusement that she'd managed to crack its supposedly unbreakable outer. And I suppose the 3 different types of scanning equipment you're all holding are just standard emergency response. Plex 8 quickly tried to reabsorb what was very clearly a bone density analyzer into their liquid mass. Standard protocol, they burbled unconvinced. Right. Kestrel stretched, making a mental note of which bones would be spectacularly bruised tomorrow. Well, since you're all here with your definitely not research equipment, want to see something really Without waiting for a response, she pulled up her sleeve to reveal a rapidly forming. The assembled aliens leaned forward despite themselves, scientific curiosity overwhelming their attempted pretense of casualness. Watch closely, she said, grinning as the bruise began to fade before their various sensory organs. This is what happens when human bones decide they don't like being told they should have broken. The sound of multiple scanning devices activating at once was almost as satisfying as the look of absolute scientific bewilderment radiating from her audience. Kestrel settled in for what promised to be a very interesting round of questions, already wondering what kind of equipment malfunction they would try next. After all, if they wanted to study human resilience, she might as well give them a proper. The Institute's quantum networks buzzed with encrypted data packets as Zix 427 convened an emergency meeting of the newly formed Xenophysiological Anomaly Research Initiative in a chamber designed to accommodate 12 different atmospheric requirements simultaneously. The galaxy's most brilliant minds gathered to discuss what they called the human durability phenomenon. Our preliminary scans are extraordinary, Plex 8 announced, their liquid form shimmering with excitement beneath the holographic displays. The human skeletal structure exhibits properties previously thought impossible. When their bones don't merely heal, they restructure themselves to become more resilient. Their translators struggled for a moment before it's as if their cellular matrix possesses a form of Vrin's crystalline surface rippled with equations as they projected a complex series of molecular simulations. The healing rate exceeds our standard regenerative models by a factor of 7. More remarkably, the subject appears to maintain full cognitive function during what should be traumatic events, the crystal being chimed in harmonics of scientific confusion. Yesterday, they responded to a severe impact by making something called a meme about Theta Null's plasma form contracted anxiously. We must establish proper observation protocol. The subject's behavioral patterns suggest an awareness level that could compromise standard research method. What followed was the galaxy's least covert research operation. Plex 8 attempted to camouflage themselves as various laboratory equipment, leading to the awkward moment when a supposedly inanimate sample container asked Kestrel about her exercise routine. Vrin tried integrating with the lab's crystal architecture, but kept accidentally solving complex equations out loud whenever. Theta Null's attempt at becoming background radiation was somewhat undermined by their constant note. The researchers established what they believed was a secure observation post in an unused storage. They failed to notice that the ventilation system was precisely sized for human maintenance access, a fact Kestrel found endlessly amusing as she listened to their daily reports from her comfortable perch. The subject exceeded expected durability parameters again today, Plex 8 reported, rippling with frustration. When the quantum calibrator experienced its scheduled malfunction, they not only avoided structural damage, but appeared to treat it as entertainment. Most concerned, Vrin chimed in frequencies of academic distress. They seem to be anticipating our research methods. This morning, they left a note rating our last experiment 7 out of 10 for creativity. The subject's adaptation to extreme gravitational changes defies all known physiological models, Plex 8 reported later, their liquid form practically boiling with excitement. They appeared to derive entertainment from conditions that should have liquefied their internal organs. Wednesday's highlight involved the mysterious malfunction of every automated door between Kestrel's lab and the cafeteria, each closing with increasing speed and force. She treated it like an obstacle course, sliding, jumping, and at one point, doing a completely unnecessary but impressively executed backflip through the closing gaps. Theta Null, who had been monitoring from the ventilation system, became so agitated that they accidentally ionized 3 passing cleaning bots. The human displays unprecedented spatial awareness and reaction times. Theta Null's plasma form buzzed with barely contained excitement during their secret meeting. Also, they left a note suggesting we try something more challenging next time, and rating our door sequence 6 out of 10 for technical difficulty. Thursday brought what the maintenance logs would later describe as the Great Environmental System Calibration Event, wherein Kestrel's lab cycle through 12 different atmospheric compositions in rapid succession. She simply pulled out her emergency breather, continued her work, and used the changing pressure gradients to conduct an impromptu experiment on xenobiological adaptation rates. The resulting paper would later cause 3 different scientific committees to demand immediate protocol revisions. Most disturbing, Zix 427's light motes pulsed in patterns of academic agitation. The subject appears to be collecting their own data on our research methods. They've started a scoring system for our experiments based on, and I quote, creativity, technical execution, and entertainment value. Friday's attempt involved what could only be described as a cascade of increasingly improbable equipment failure. It started with a simple anti-gravity malfunction and escalated into what Kestrel's personal log described as a Rube Goldberg machine of scientific panic. The sequence involved 3 quantum computers, 17 specimen containers, a malfunctioning matter replicator, and ended with her surfing an anti-gravity wave on a detached lab table. The human's response to catastrophic system failures continues to exceed all predictive models, Vryn reported, their crystalline structure vibrating with a mix of horror and admiration. They not only survived the sequential equipment malfunctions, but appeared to improvise several new experimental protocols during the event. In her own research notes, carefully hidden in what she'd labeled as human respiratory exercise logs, knowing no one would willingly read about human breathing practices, Kestrel documented each test with growing amusement. Day 15. Research team attempted synchronized equipment failures today. Suggested they study chaos theory for better results. Bonus observation. Crystalline beings can apparently faint.
Oh no!
The inevitable breaking point arrived during what the research team later dubbed the quantum containment incident, though Kestrel preferred to call it the day the scientists learned about human patience limits. It began innocently enough in the quantum containment chamber, where Kestrel was conducting routine maintenance on the artificial gravity regulator. The first sign of trouble came when the chamber's inner door sealed with an ominous hiss, followed by the distinct sound of multiple backup systems engaging simultaneously. Warning, announced the station's AI in 17 different languages. Quantum containment protocols initiating. Chamber performing automatic atmospheric recalibration.
Pause.
Then more quietly, my sincerest apologies, Maintenance Specialist Andromeda. They insisted this was for science. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Kestrel spotted her audience. Plex 8 had abandoned any pretense of stealth, their liquid form practically vibrating with scientific anticipation. Vryn's crystalline structure blazed with complex equations, while Theta Null's plasma form darted anxiously between monitoring stations. Zix 427's light motes pulsed in patterns that suggested both academic excitement and mild ethical concern. The chamber began cycling through environmental extremes that would have given a safety inspector an existential crisis. Temperature fluctuations from near absolute zero to plasma formation levels. Gravity shifting between gas giant crushing forces and deep space microgravity. Atmospheric pressure changes that could have compacted a small moon into a decorative paperweight. Kestrel watched the readings with growing amusement, mentally calculating how long it would take the research team to realize they'd miscalibrated the quantum field harmonics. About 3 seconds before the chamber's containment field would have destabilized spectacularly, she pulled out her emergency toolkit and started making adjustments to the control panel. Subject is interfering with experimental parameters. Theta Null buzzed in alarm. Emergency shutdown recommended. Fascinating, Plex 8 burbled, taking readings with 17 different devices simultaneously. They appear to be recalibrating the quantum harmonics while experiencing 17 different environmental extremes. Previous models suggested this should be impossible. The mathematics are expressing distress. Vryn chimed in frequencies of scientific panic. Their actions defy fundamental universal constants. That's when Kestrel decided she'd had enough. Using the chamber's now stabilized quantum field, she created a localized gravity bubble and simply walked through the supposedly impenetrable containment barrier. The research team's various sensory organs tracked her movement with what could only be described as collective scientific horror. "Right," she said, brushing off some frozen atmospheric particles from her sleeve. "First, your quantum field equations need serious revision. Second, you've got the human durability calculations all wrong. And third," she pulled out her own research notebook, "if you wanted to study human adaptability, you could have just asked. I've been running my own study on alien research methodologies for the past 3 weeks." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Vryn's crystalline structure, vibrating in harmonics of embarrassment, and Theta Null's plasma form briefly shorting out 3 nearby data terminals. "Would you believe," Zix 427's light motes pulsed apologetically, "that this was all an elaborate welcome ceremony?" "Nice try," Kestrel grinned, pulling up her own data charts. "Now, who wants to discuss the proper way to conduct cross-species research? I've got some fascinating observations about your observation techniques." The aftermath of the quantum containment incident transformed the Institute's approach to cross-species research. In the main conference chamber, designed to accommodate beings from across the electromagnetic spectrum, Kestrel stood before a captivated audience of the galaxy's foremost xenobiologists. "You've been approaching this all wrong," she explained, while holographic displays showed Earth's environmental conditions. "Human resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about adapting, learning, and honestly, being too stubborn to accept limitations." Plex 8's liquid form rippled with revelation. As they watched footage of Earth's various extreme sports, "Your species intentionally seeks out physical challenges that could cause structural damage." "For recreational purposes?" "Exactly," Kestrel grinned, switching the display to show rock climbing competitions. "We don't just survive harsh conditions, we turn them into games. When our bones break, they heal stronger. When we face impossible odds, we get creative." Vryn's crystalline structure vibrated with academic epiphany. "The mathematics suggest a correlation between physical stress and physiological improvement that defies conventional adaptation models. Their faceted surface flickered with rapid calculations. Your species doesn't merely endure, you actively pursue opportunities for controlled failure." "Now you're getting it," Kestrel nodded, bringing up data from her own research. "Did you know that Theta Null's plasma form changes color based on their level of scientific excitement? I've mapped out 7 distinct chromatic patterns." Theta Null buzzed with embarrassed recognition, their form briefly shifting through several of the documented color patterns. "You were conducting your own research the entire time?" "Of course. You think humans only study things that try to break us?" Kestrel pulled up her detailed logs of their various experimental attempts. "Though I have to say, the synchronized equipment failure sequence last week was impressively choreographed. The anti-gravity wave was a nice touch." Zix 427's light motes pulsed with a new understanding. "We approached human durability as a problem to be solved, when we should have recognized it as an opportunity for mutual learning." "Exactly," Kestrel agreed. "Your methodical approach to research is fascinating. But sometimes you need to embrace a little chaos. Sometimes the best discoveries come from being willing to fail spectacularly and learn." The transformation in the research team was remarkable. Plex 8 began incorporating controlled variables of unpredictability into their experiment. Vryn developed new mathematical models that accounted for what they termed the human chaos factor. Theta Null's plasma form started exhibiting more adventurous behavior pattern, though they still refused to try coffee after watching Kestrel's daily caffeine intake. "Perhaps," Zix 427 suggested, "their light motes forming patterns of academic excitement, we could establish a formal cross-species research initiative. One that combines our methodical approach with your unique perspective on experimental protocols." "I'd like that," Kestrel smiled. already imagining the possibilities, and maybe reinforce the quantum containment chambers, and definitely get some better safety harnesses. The research team collectively shuddered at the mention of safety equipment, but their various sensory organs gleamed with newfound scientific enthusiasm. They had finally begun to understand that human resilience wasn't just about surviving. It was about turning every challenge into an opportunity for growth, preferably while doing something that made safety inspectors question their career choices. 6 months after the quantum containment incident, the Galactic Medical Institute unveiled its revolutionary cross-species research initiative. The new protocols, co-authored by Kestrel Andromeda and the former secret research team, became required reading across 17 galaxies. The document began with what would become its most quoted line: "Warning. Human involvement may result in unexpected innovations, protocol violations, and inexplicable improvements to previously reliable equipment." The Institute's laboratories transformed into spaces where methodical alien science merged with human-style creative problem-solving. Plex 8 learned to appreciate what they termed controlled chaos methodology, though they still insisted on maintaining detailed records of every accidental discovery. Their liquid form developed a particular enthusiasm for what humans called winging it, leading to several groundbreaking discoveries and only 3 minor containment breaches. Vrin revolutionized the field of xenomathematics by incorporating what they termed human intuitive variables into their equation. Their crystalline structure now regularly chimed with excitement during experimental procedures, especially when things went spectacularly wrong in educational. Theta Null's plasma form became noticeably more adventurous, though they drew the line at trying human sports. Some activity, they buzzed firmly, should remain strictly theoretical, especially anything involving what humans call skateboard. The Institute's new safety manual, expanded to 17 volumes, included such essential guidelines as not all explosions are failures, and if a human says watch this, activate all available recording equipment. A special addendum covered proper procedures for differentiating between actual emergencies and what became officially classified as human standard enthusiasm. Zix 427's light motes now pulsed with pride when giving tours of the Institute's newly established Department of Unconventional Research Methodology. "Here, we study not just the physics of the universe," they would explain, "but also the uniquely human art of turning laboratory accidents into research breakthrough." As for Kestrel, she received a unique position created specifically for her: Chief Innovation Officer for Improbable Solutions. Her office door bore a plaque reading Chaos Theorist in Residence. Though she spent more time in the labs, teaching alien scientists the fine art of learning through carefully controlled design. The Institute's insurance providers still haven't quite recovered from